Before the franchise became a global juggernaut, the original Mission Impossible was a wild gamble. A spy thriller with plot twists, stunt work, and enough behind-the-scenes chaos to fill a classified dossier. Here are 7 little-known facts about how this 90s classic nearly self-destructed, and then somehow became an action movie landmark. The vault scene almost didn't happen. That iconic Langley drop, the one every movie nerd has freeze-framed and every late-night host has parodied, it almost didn't make the final cut. The issue wasn't the wires, or the timing, or the camera work. It was gravity and Tom Cruise's surprisingly normal human body trying to stay suspended in that perfectly horizontal position. During filming, every time Cruise was lowered into the vault set, the slightest shift in his weight would tip him off balance. His legs would drift, his arms would flail, or worse, he'd smack into the floor with a not-so-spy-like thud. For a scene built entirely on silence and tension, the bloopers were more slapstick than slick. They tried everything, adjusting the harness, tweaking the rigging, changing the angles. Nothing worked. The scene just kept collapsing, literally and figuratively, until Cruise, in what might be the most low-budget genius moment of his career, pulled off a classic MacGyver move. He slipped coins into his shoes. Quarters, dimes. Just enough weight to counterbalance his upper body and keep him steady in midair. Suddenly, the wobble was gone. The silhouette was perfect. The moment worked. So yes, one of the greatest suspense scenes in action movie history was saved by spare change. Literally. And that's the kind of detail that makes Mission Impossible more than just an action movie. It's a stuntman's Rube Goldberg machine, and sometimes the solution is hiding in your sneakers. De Palma was rewriting on the fly. Think the plot of Mission Impossible is confusing? Good. That means you were paying attention. Twists within twists. Double agents turning triple. People peeling off masks like it's a Halloween party on Fast Forward. If it felt like the movie was making it up as it went along, well, that's because it kind of was. The original script had problems, not just little dialogue tweaks or scene trims, but fundamental structural issues. So director Brian De Palma, screenwriter Robert Towne, and Tom Cruise basically turned the film set into a live writer's room. Entire sequences were rewritten on location, dialogue was overhauled between takes. In some cases, the crew was literally adjusting lights and camera angles while a new version of the scene was being printed out. It wasn't chaos for chaos' sake, it was controlled mayhem, fueled by a desire to get it right. But it meant that the cast and crew were sometimes just a half step ahead of the audience. A character's motivation could change in the time it took to reset a shot. Subplots were trimmed, flipped, or invented altogether in real time. The result? A movie that's intentionally disorienting, often borderline incoherent, and yet somehow totally riveting. And maybe that's what makes it work. It doesn't just feel like a spy movie, it feels like it was a spy mission. Everyone constantly adapting, improvising, and hoping they weren't being double-crossed by their own script pages. Emilio Estevez's secret cameo. You probably forgot he was even in the movie, and that's the point. Emilio Estevez pops up in the opening mission as Jack Harmon, the tech expert. He's charismatic, cracking jokes, and then boom, he's brutally killed by a spiked elevator roof. All within the first 15 minutes. But here's the twist. Estevez went uncredited on purpose. The goal? Pull a Hitchcock. Just like Psycho shocked audiences by killing off Janet Leigh early, Mission Impossible wanted to jolt viewers by offering a recognizable star out of nowhere. It worked. And for 90s audiences, it was a genuine jaw-drop moment. The train finale was insanely expensive. If the Langley vault drop was all about restraint, tension, silence, a single bead of sweat, then the train finale was the complete opposite, a symphony of chaos. Picture this. A bullet train speeding through the English countryside, a helicopter attached to it by a cable, a tunnel approaching at 200 miles an hour, and Tom Cruise, fully suited, launched like a missile through the eye of the storm. It wasn't just an action scene, it was a fever dream built from stunt wire, wind machines, and sheer cinematic nerve. To pull it off, the production didn't just roll up to a train yard and start filming. They transformed the legendary 007 stage at Pinewood Studios into an industrial hurricane. Massive fans simulated the airflow of a train, moving at breakneck speeds. The wind was so intense, crew members were literally getting blown over. One misstep and you were airborne. They fused practical train cars with green screens, meticulously crafted miniatures, and bleeding-edge CGI, at a time when digital effects were still finding their footing. Everything had to blend seamlessly, because Mission Impossible wasn't about hiding behind effects. It was about making the unbelievable feel real. And it came at a price. This was one of the most expensive action scenes ever filmed at the time. But it paid off. That helicopter in the tunnel climax didn't just stick the landing, it set the tone for the franchise's future. Every impossible stunt that came after, crews hanging off planes, climbing skyscrapers, leaping between mountains, started with this moment. It wasn't just an ending, it was a promise. This franchise is going to break the laws of physics and somehow make it look easy. Cruise did almost all his own stunts. This is where the legend of Stunt Tom really begins. Yes, Cruise dangled from that ceiling in Langley. Yes, he leapt onto that train. Almost every insane stunt in the film, he did it himself. It wasn't a PR gimmick, it was a mindset. Cruise believed the audience could feel the difference. And after this movie, doing his own stunts became part of his DNA as a performer. From hanging off planes in Rogue Nation to halo jumps in Fallout, it all started here, in a quiet room at CIA headquarters with a harness, a wire, and some coins in his shoes. The CIA location was kind of real. Getting permission to film at the actual CIA headquarters in Langley? Not a chance. But the production found a workaround. They recreated the building's exterior using publicly available satellite imagery, photographs, and a bit of Hollywood set magic. The result was a surprisingly accurate and very convincing fake Langley. The real CIA reportedly wasn't thrilled about the portrayal. Between shady agents, moles, and exploding gum, it didn't exactly scream public service. But from a filmmaking perspective, mission accomplished. The illusion was so effective, many viewers thought they'd actually filmed inside the real thing. The original ending was totally different. The Mission Impossible we all know wraps up with Ethan Hunt sipping a martini on a plane, cool, composed, and inevitably being sucked right back into the world of double crosses and detonators. But that sleek, sequel-ready ending, that wasn't always the plan. Early drafts of the script were more nostalgic than explosive. They leaned heavily into the DNA of the original 1960s TV series, loaded with callbacks, character connections, and direct nods to longtime fans. Think more Easter eggs, less edge-of-your-seat spectacle. But when they tested those versions with audiences, something didn't click. The reaction wasn't terrible, it was just flat. People didn't want a sentimental handshake with the past. They wanted the fuse to keep burning. They wanted adrenaline. So the creative team hit the brakes and the cutting room. The ending was overhauled late in production with a singular goal: give people something big. That's when the now iconic helicopter chasing a train through a tunnel sequence was born. It was loud, risky, and logistically insane. But it worked, not just as a finale, but as a launch pad. Because here's the thing, that change didn't just improve the movie, it built the blueprint for the entire franchise. Mission Impossible stopped being a reboot of an old show and became the prototype for modern action storytelling, unexpected, escalating, and entirely driven by spectacle. In hindsight, ditching the nostalgia was the best wrong turn they ever made. Looking back, the first Mission Impossible was less a guaranteed hit and more a high-stakes experiment. A reboot of a beloved TV series with a famously convoluted plot, mid-shoot rewrites, and a leading man who insisted on dangling from ceilings and clinging to moving trains. But somehow it worked. It turned a tricky concept into a billion-dollar franchise. It launched Tom Cruise into a whole new stratosphere of action stardom. And it proved that spy thrillers didn't need to choose between brains and spectacle, they could have both and throw an exploding gum for good measure. And maybe the biggest mission of all, pulling off a blockbuster this ambitious and making it look effortless. What were your favorite parts of the first Mission Impossible movie? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you on the next one!